Well, hello, football fans out there, and welcome to the Head Couch Analyst Show. I am your host, Sanders, and I'm joined by my co-host, Pardue. How you doing, bud?
Hanging in there.
Hanging in there?
Best as you can be, given the world situation.
Oh yeah, of course. So, for those out there that have listened to our show, this is probably, I would say, the sixth or seventh official episode that we put out. However, if you're brand new to the show, welcome and thank you much for tuning in to us. Today we got an episode I'm sure you've seen from the YouTube title already, that we're going to be talking about what is, in our opinion, the 10 most improved teams in the NFL. A little bit about us. So we call ourselves the Head Couch Analysts because we know that we are amateur analysts, and we like how the term head couch goes with that. So kind of like a couch analyst, ha ha ha. So we are not, uber professional. We actually are going to have our very first guest on this show in a couple episodes. It's actually going to be Bootleg Fantasy. If you know who he is, if you don't, you should follow him on Twitter. He's got everything you want for fantasy football, and he has a website called Climb the Pocket as well. Highly recommend going to that website or even checking out Bootleg Fantasy's Twitter. He's also got some funny things and funny little facts about football that he writes down there too. I learned some things about football that I don't even know from him. So quick shout out to him, and once again, thanks again for tuning in to us. So let's get to the part where you actually came here for, which was, what the video was titled, the 10 most improved teams. We are not ranking these teams as a top 10. Pardue and I just looked at teams, and we actually agreed on 8 of them. 2 of them we kind of wrestled and tussled on. So what we decided to do was we debated one team, threw one out, put one in, and we gave another one an honorable mention. So I think we're good to go on this. Are you?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Alrighty, cool. So the first improved team, probably so every single Midwestern fan can absolutely go nuts, is we're going to talk about the Cowboys. And if you've listened to our show before, you know that neither of us are huge Cowboys fans. I was heavily on the Cowboy train last year, not so much this year. But regardless, it's hard to deny the fact that they actually did really well for their roster. So let's start out with how they improved. Well, first of all, they got rid of their bum head coach, and they got Mike McCarthy. Now, while that's not maybe an improvement to some people, it may be a side grade. I think it's a side grade that's actually kind of an upgrade, because I would trust Mike McCarthy to play call in 3rd and 1 situations and give Ezekiel Elliott the ball over throwing it. I think that's a situation that gave me a lot of headaches last year, was when it was 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, and they just did not give Elliott the ball. It made no sense to me whatsoever. So that's pretty nice. Second thing has to do with their draft, and Pardue probably is going to nail this better than I will. So why don't you talk about what you like about their draft?
Well, first things first is you just look at their first round pick in CeeDee Lamb. This was a guy who everyone, not everyone, but a good majority of people were expecting him to be the first wide receiver off the board. The Cardinals were heavy favorites for him to take him at 8, and he ends up following all the way down to 17. That right there is one of the best value picks in the draft. And then, in addition to that, here, names are slipping my head right now, so let me look up the list real quick. But here, give me a second. Go ahead and give me your thoughts on CD.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb was kind of a steal, right? I remember when I thought the Broncos were going to take him, and then they took Jerry Jeudy instead, which is totally fine. For me, like the big thing besides the draft, and I really like the CD connection. I think it goes well to Mari Cooper and Michael Gallup. That's a deadly trio right there. There's no excuse for Dak Prescott to not have over like 40,000 yards again, like he did last year. The big thing for me on why this Dallas team is up there, and I'll leave the draft for you, would actually be their free agency. I liked the pickup of Clinton Dix, Gerald McCoy. They retained Sean Lee. They ended up getting Blake Jarwin as a tight end to replace Jason Witten. Whether or not, Blake Jarwin actually is able to put 400 or 500 yards, I don't really know. Obviously, Jason Witten was not in his prime this last year. He went to the Raiders. So I just really like what they did. This roster was already really solid last year. It was a roster that should have performed better than it did last year. But this year they improved what was already a pretty good roster, and heavily so. I the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They always seem to have like a great season and then they just fall flat the next time and then they rise up again. This feels like a season where they should rise up based upon their additions, but I couldn't tell you for sure. It's the Dallas Cowboys, and they have a new head coach, and they haven't had any single physical practice yet because of COVID.
Now going back to the draft, not only getting the great value pick at number 17 with CeeDee Lamb, with the 51st overall pick in the second round, they took defensive back Trevon Diggs out of Alabama. And now this draft in particular, it wasn't super deep at the defensive back position. So to get this guy, Trevon Diggs, at 51st overall, I thought was also really great value. After losing Byron Jones, letting Byron Jones walk, we obviously saw the massive deal he got with the Dolphins. Letting him walk, it's a downgrade because you're downgrading from one of the better defensive backs in the league, and everybody wants to bring up the interception numbers, but I don't really believe that. Byron Jones is a shutdown corner. He's a good cover corner. But overall it's a downgrade and we don't really know what Trevon Diggs is yet, I still think that's a really good replacement. And I mean, obviously it's going to be cheaper in the long run. In addition to that, they with their third round pick, number 82 overall, they got Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, which is great to their already what should be stout defense. Obviously, it didn't quite play up to expectations last year, but he is a stud, and he's going to be really good on that. They ended up taking another defensive back to kind of shore up the back end in the fourth round, and Reggie Robinson out of Tulsa. I personally don't know much about him, but obviously once you get later into the draft, you're looking more for depth and, potential like diamonds in the rough and so on and so forth. And then they had 2 fifth-round picks. One of them was the center out of Wisconsin, Tyler, I believe you say his last name, Biadazi. I'm not quite sure, but it's Biadasz. Obviously, the Cowboys have a really, really great offensive line. I honestly don't really see him starting right away, but it's solid depth. He could probably switch from either guard and center anywhere on the interior part of the offensive line.
Yeah, it was probably something needed with the loss of Travis Frederick happening.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, yeah.
He actually might see starting time.
He could. I don't see him starting beginning to. I don't see him starting week 1, but maybe being worked in later in the year, or if somebody goes down.
If I remember correctly, they traded up for him.
You may be correct. So if that's the case, they obviously really like him. So, and then their second fifth-round pick at number 179 overall, they took defensive end Bradley Anae out of Utah. And this was a guy like people were projecting to go as high as the second or third round, and to get him in the fifth at 179 was really great value there. And I believe, again, probably not going to be a starter right away, but he'll definitely be in the rotation on the defensive line. He has the potential to be a solid player. Obviously, we don't know how any of these rookies are truly going to turn out, especially towards the later round. But I believe he has the chance to be a really solid player. And then in the seventh round, it's kind of unnecessary to mention his name, but they took a quarterback, Ben DiNucci, out of Madison, or James Madison. He'll probably end up being a camp arm. He might make it as the backup, but personally, no, because they have Andy Dalton. Because not a lot of quarterbacks keep not a lot of teams keep 3 quarterbacks anymore. This is probably just a camp arm for the Cowboys going forward. But overall, that's a pretty solid draft. That's a top 3 draft. And then in addition to their free agent acquisitions, they had an incredible offseason. And I hate the Cowboys with all of my being, but I'll give them.
Yeah, It's funny how when you're an analyst, you got to get rid of that. What last thing is they actually took Don Terry Poe, a defensive tackle as well. Essentially, what the Cowboys did was they were like, all right, we already got Gallup, we got Prescott, we got Elliott, and we got Amari Cooper. Holy moly. For 2 seconds, I forgot his name. So once they got CeeDee Lamb, I'm pretty sure at that point they were like, you know what? Our offense is solid. We need to replace Travis Frederick, which is why they traded up for Tyler. Right. I'm looking at his name, too, and I can't really say it. Diaziz. We'll just call him that for now. We'll just call him Tyler for now. But until we hear his actual last name on TV or something like that. But if you look at like their free agency and the rest of the draft, it was all defensive-minded. They knew that their defense did not hold up last year like it should have, and I think this was the right move, right? You signed some veterans that you know will probably be pretty good. Clinton Dix is familiar with Mike McCarthy. Joe McCoy's still pretty good. Maybe not in his prime, but he's still pretty good. Don Terry Poe. And then they drafted a ton of depth. So, quite honestly, I think they took the right direction for what a winning team is supposed to do. Right? You get in some veterans that you know are going to give you solid play, and then you draft depth behind it, so when the veterans do leave or you don't want to pay them anymore, you have, a second or third year to come up and take over. Youth, cheaper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Chiefs have been doing that. The Ravens have been doing that. Most recently, the Cardinals are starting to do that. We'll see if that works out for them. The 49ers have been doing that for a while, and it finally paid off last year. The Patriots have always been doing that, so... It's a tried and true formula, right? It just took the NFL a long time to get to it. It seems like New England knew that was the case, but everyone else kind of didn't. So, yeah, I think the Cowboys are a solid team, and they make our top 10 easily. I think when you have, a top 5, top 3 draft, you're going to easily fit into this list. The next one, this may scratch the heads of some people, but let's talk about the Browns. So, on paper, you might think to yourself, well, what in the hell did the Browns do besides get rid of their old head coach and put in Stefanski as their head coach? And while that would certainly turn some heads of people, and it may not give everyone, a reason to say, well, that's not why they improved so drastically. Well, let's look at what they picked up in the draft and in free agency. How about that, okay? So first of all, you signed Austin Hooper in free agency. That's already a massive upgrade, I feel, at tight end, right? It's another pass catcher for you, and it's another weapon for Baker Mayfield.
They were already loaded in that spot, too.
Yeah, I think I think they overpaid for him. I will say that. But David Njoku got injured sometimes, and getting someone like Austin Hooper helps you out. Stefanski also likes running double tight end sets, so this is perfect for them, right? They used double tight end sets, I think, on 62% of offensive snaps, or maybe it was 57. Either way, they used it a lot in the Vikings offense, right? So if Kevin Stefanski likes that, and now you have David Njoku and Austin Hooper, that helps you fit Stefanski's system, and I'm sure he'll play to Baker Mayfield's strengths, but I can definitely see Baker Mayfield thriving in like a duo tight end set. It also, when you have a duo tight end set, that also helps your running game. That helps Nick Chubb. It helps Kareem Hunt. There's a lot of things going on here that helps with hell. Just the Austin Hooper signing already makes them vastly better with Kevin Stefanski being their coach, right? They also got Jack Conklin from the Titans, right? They gave him a massive deal so that way he can protect Mayfield, because Mayfield was sacked 40 times last year. I think that was the 7th most. And he was sacked 40 times.
They really showed up their offensive line.
Yeah, he was sacked 40 times, which totally sucks, right? And that goes up to their draft, right? Where one of their very first picks was an offensive tackle. It was Jedrick Wills.
It was their first pick. They took Jedrick Wills, who, personally, I wasn't quite as big on Wills as other people. He was still arguably the first tackle that should have been taken off the board, but there was an argument for a lot of tackles in that spot. Like, people thought a guy like Josh Jones, who the Cardinals took in the 3rd round, could have been the first tackle taken off the board. Now, Jedrick Wills, I believe, was the 2nd or 3rd, but I believe he was
more risky. I feel like he's a little bit more raw, but to add a guy like that to an offensive line that needs good players, he's going to be a good player. I'm not quite sure he's going to live up to the value where they got him at, because personally I wasn't super huge on Wills. But they addressed a massive need, and they should have gotten a really good player there. And to add two really good potential tackles in one offseason in Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, the two most important offensive line positions at left and right tackle, that's massive, and it'll be great for Mayfield. Like as you said, he was sacked 40 times.
Yeah, so that's already an upgrade. You upgraded your offense. You gave Baker. At this point, Baker has no excuse to underperform, I feel. Right? I mean, there's going to be some learning curves to Stefanski's offense. I totally agree with that. But if you're just going to run a basic playbook, which is probably what you should do for a little bit, I see no excuse for you with this amount of talent for Baker to do poorly. The team might do poorly, but I would expect Baker to be a lot better than he was last year, more similar to his first year than his second year. I think that's
right. And when you
go ahead.
Oh, okay. And then like going off of what you're saying, like when Baker should be taking a step forward. When you're looking at these last two off seasons for the Browns, they've really crushed. For them to take the step back last year was pretty shocking, and it could have mostly come down to coaching.
That's what I say. I hated the hire last year, and not everything should be on a coach, but holy moly, dude. When other coaches are saying, yeah, he didn't have meetings prepared, he didn't have this, he didn't have that, he had no idea how to run a team. I think when the top is not secured, it's kind of like one of those things where if a company, right, if the CEO is not good, everything's going to crumble within, right? And I think that's kind of the same thing. If the head coach isn't going to work, the roster is going to crumble within. So I blame a lot of it on the fact that Freddie Kitchens was just not ready to be a head coach.
In addition to the players that we've already mentioned, one player that I really loved that they drafted, they got him in the second round, was Grant Delpit, the safety out of LSU. Now, at LSU last year, he kind of took a step back, but he is a great player. He has the ability to cover the slot. He has the ability to take the high safety point, and he can also play in the box. He's a very versatile player. Like and I don't know if you know the Legend of Seven at LSU, but like all the great LSU players wear number 7. Patrick Peterson wore number 7. Tyrann Mathieu, Leonard Fournette, so on and so forth. That's like tradition for LSU. And Grant Delpit also wore 7. He didn't have a stellar year last year, and at times he struggled with wrapping up on his tackles. But I feel like given the right coaching, in the right situation with good pieces around him as well, he could be a really good safety in this league.
Yep, I agree. So the last thing on the Browns that I have, and then if you got anything more, you can say it, but I'm willing to move on after, it needs to be mentioned, Myles Garrett will be back this year. He was not there for a while. We all know why. We don't need to talk about it. But he was not there. He served a 6-game suspension. And by the way, he had 10 sacks in 10 games. He was on his way to 16 sacks if he continued his production. That's a mega season. He's already considered like one of the best pass rushers in the game, and it's kind of a shame that he didn't get to finish his season. Not because I think it's a shame he didn't get to finish despite his actions. I mean, if he didn't do those actions, we would have seen a full season by Myles Garrett and quite possibly a pretty damn good pass rushing season. There's no guarantee he gets the 16 sacks, but 10 sacks in 10 games, I'm taking it. I'm 100% taking it. I'll take 10 sacks for the season, dude. So, yeah, getting Myles Garrett back is going to be massive for a defensive line that's already really scary with, like, Olivier Vernon. They drafted depth behind their starters already. This Browns team it's ready to go. It needs to have a coach that's going to put them in the right direction, but this roster talent-wise is ready to go. I absolutely believe in this Browns team. If Kevin Stefanski can do the job he is supposed to do. That's a massive if, though, right?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, like you're saying, like this team should be ready to go. This is arguably one of the most talented teams. Not even arguably, this is one of the most talented teams in the National Football League right now. They should be competing. And now it's going to be tough given the division they're in, because obviously the Ravens, who the Ravens have the most talented football team in baseball, or excuse me, in
baseball. You mean,
I know,
yeah, football. I know what you mean.
Yeah, given the situation with the baseballs in, it's been on my mind a lot. But they have the most talented team in football, and then with Steelers getting Ben Roethlisberger back and that monster defense that they already have, the Steelers are going to be really competitive again next year, I'm sure. They'll push for a playoff spot, especially with the expanded playoffs. So it's going to be tough. And the Bengals are also, they're going to probably, more likely than not, I don't see any situation where they don't. They're going to finish fourth in their division, but they're going to be massively better than they were this last year. So it's going to be tough. They have a tough schedule in front of them, and their division is also tough. But there's no reason to say that this team can't compete unless it's coaching, where Baker Mayfield really is what he is last year.
Yeah. So I think this will be quite the year for Baker Mayfield. I mean, it's going to be quite the year for this team. I hope, based upon comments that he made during the Super Bowl, that Baker Mayfield shows some growth and that he does pretty well this year. I have hope for him. I haven't given up on him yet. I may not like him in the moment right now, but I haven't given up on him yet. So, all right, next team. You want to head to the AFC East or the AFC West?
Let's go AFC West.
Let's go to the AFC West. All right, let's hit up the Broncos. All right, so a lot of people might wonder, why would you ever pick the Broncos, right? Well, all you really need to do is examine their draft and the trades that they made during free agency, and it's very clear to see why this team is massively improved, and there's a reason why there's a lot of hype behind this team. Excluding Drew Lock from the equation for a second, they got Melvin Gordon to go behind Philip Lindsay.
Mm-hmm. Philip Lindsay, who also has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and nobody talks about that. Philip Lindsay's a good back.
Yeah, you got Melvin Gordon, who may or may not experience his heyday anymore, but the fact is you got Melvin Gordon as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that. That's
a really good two-headed monster in the backfield.
Awesome, right? And then you lost Chris Harris Jr., right? So what do? You replace him with A.J. Bouye. I'm pretty happy with that. I think Chris Harris might be better, but I'm still pretty happy about that if I'm a Denver Broncos fan. You managed to retain your other corner, Bryce Callahan, right? And then you were able to pick up, oh my goodness, I think it was Nick Vanette, who is going to be right next to, I didn't write it down in my notes, holy moly. Who's the Broncos tight end that everyone loves right now? Oh my goodness.
Noah Fant.
Noah Fant, thank you. You got Nick Vanette to go right next to Noah Fant. Now, I don't anticipate double tight ends to be the core of this offense, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised ever, because if you look at offenses that Vic Fangio has coached under before, they like to run double tight ends, so maybe he's used to that kind of thing. As for how the Broncos offensive coordinator is actually going to put the offense, I mean, I really couldn't tell you. I think Pat Shurmur, I don't know if I see him as a double tight end kind of guy. Maybe he adapts to Drew Lock and he realized double tight ends might be better for Drew Lock, but I can't see it. Either way, picking up Nick Vanette is pretty nice. You really didn't lose much in the offseason. Like I said, you lost Chris Harris, but you replaced him with A.J. Bouye. I will say, yeah, you did lose Derek Wolfe, but then you replaced him with Jarrell Casey from the Titans. That's a big name. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's a massive name. I couldn't believe the Titans didn't re-sign him. And, I saw this article the other day that Jarrell Casey came out with the same, and he's like, I can't believe they didn't pay me. I can't believe I gave them multiple great seasons, and they didn't bring him back. Jarrell Casey is a very, very good player.
Yeah, so you might have lost Derek Wolfe, but, hey, you got Jarrell Casey. And I think, I'm happy the Ravens picked up Derek Wolfe as a Ravens fan, but Jarrell Casey is better. The Broncos upgraded, right? So Wait, what's not to like about what the Broncos did here? And then let's talk about the drafts. Let's go to our draft man over here.
So, first things first, taking Jerry Jeudy, who is a lot of people, the majority of analysts had him being the number one wide receiver in this draft. Obviously, he ended up going second, right behind Henry Ruggs, which was kind of a question mark to me personally, but Raiders are going to be the Raiders. Anyway, I love the Jerry Jeudy pick, and then they also got KJ Hamler. When you look at this wide receiver core, now I think it's a little bit early to say it on the KJ Hamler, but he's going to be another really good wide receiver. He's going to be an incredible number 3 guy. But when you look at these 3 receivers, in Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler, you could argue that that's 3 number 1 receivers right there. Their receiver core is stacked. And then you add Noah Fant to that too, and I believe Vernette, that was his name, the other tight end.
Yep.
You add that to give to Drew Lock, as well as an incredible 2-headed monster running backfield in Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. Whew, man! Now I'm not a super huge. I'm not totally sold on Drew Lock. I think his ceiling is an Eli Manning, Joe Flacco type. And I mean, that's still won Super Bowls, so I mean, that's still great.
I mean, I definitely got him at an Alex Smith type or Kirk Cousins. That's where watching his film, that's what he reminds me of.
And I would, and for the most part, I would probably put those guys in about the same category. So I agree with you there. But for real, when you're looking at this offense, it's just so stacked. And for Drew Lock to be coming into his first full year starting with this kind of supporting cast, he's in a very, very good situation.
He was put in a position to succeed. I also think it helps that, and I think it was a bit of a homer pick by Elway. They also, I will not say his last name. It's like Aqueg Bunan or something like that. It was a tight end from Mizzou, which is where Drew Lock came from. So
right.
Drew Lock is going to have a familiar face at tight end as well. If this guy makes the team, he was a 4th round pick. I anticipate he would make the team because he's a 4th round pick. But it helps that you have a guy who you were playing with previously, right? And then he comes in and he's on your team now.
Right.
So I think that helps a lot too. This draft was specifically designed to address some defensive holes that they had, and John Elway basically saying, yo, Drew Lock is our quarterback, at least for this year. Let's find out if he's our franchise guy and build the offense around him.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to the free agent acquisitions and their draft, players returning to health. Everybody's forgotten about Bradley Chubb.
Oh, you're so right. I forgot about that too. Holy moly.
Chubb had an incredible rookie season. And in addition to that, Justin Simmons.
Yep.
You put Bradley Chubb across from Justin Simmons and Von Miller, that's going to take those double teams away from Von Miller. So Von Miller could have a spike in production. To have Bradley Chubb and Justin Simmons, man, good luck opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, Dan, I've been really high on this Broncos team, and every time I talk about them, I get higher and higher. Like, they are definitely, like, almost as guaranteed to be a wild card pick for me. I am not into the hype that this team will win the division. I think that's insanity.
Yeah, there's no way. Sorry.
I almost want to call it disrespectful to the Chiefs. I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand the Chiefs didn't necessarily upgrade their roster at all. But woohoo, you didn't upgrade a Super Bowl winning roster. What do you friggin' do? Like, did we forget that they were 8 minutes away from losing the Super Bowl and then they just won it because they could? Did we forget that they were down 24-0 to the Texans and then they won it because they could? Did we forget that the Titans had full control for one half of a game and then the Chiefs took it back because they could? Like, did we forget that this team was only 12-4 because Patrick Mahomes got hurt? Like, what world are we living in where the Broncos are a better team than the Chiefs? I am high on the Broncos. I am so high. I'm so excited for Drew Lock. I think he's going to be great. In his 5 games, I really like the tape. And I'm high on this Broncos team, but in no way would I ever say that they're going to beat the Chiefs for the division.
Mm-hmm.
That's so disrespectful to the Chiefs, in my opinion. So, that was a small rant. Either way, this is a massive improvement. I would probably, when I was looking at these, I think another team we got on here that we'll mention later, that team or the Broncos were probably my instant picks. Because there were two teams that I instantly picked, and I was like, I will fight with Pardue if he says these two teams are not in it. So,
Right.
Yeah, they had an incredible draft. They had a great free agency. I feel like John Elway nailed an offseason for once.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and he might actually finally have his quarterback.
Yeah, I know. That'd be nice, right? All right, so we've been in the AFC for the last couple teams. Let's go back to the NFC. Let's go to the NFC South. Let's get both teams that we have in the NFC South. Let's talk about the Saints. So, first of all, you might ask yourself, okay, why would you put the Saints in, your top 10 most improved when they were already, a divisional playoff team, right? I think a lot of people forget that despite the fact that this Saints roster is very good, it had a couple of holes, and they addressed them. For example, they really needed to address the safety position. They got Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins automatically, with Marshawn Lattimore in the secondary as well, makes that secondary way better. Way better, right? Like, am I overstating his signing here? Because I feel like that was the most important part of their offseason. It was the fact that they
I wouldn't say it's overstating it. I like Malcolm Jenkins. I wouldn't call him elite, but I think it's a really good upgrade to what they had. So,
okay, let's add in the fact that they upgraded their offensive line in the draft, right? Let's add in the fact that they went for a tight end for Adam Trotman. I'm not too sure about what to say about Adam Trotman when it comes to his blocking skills. I just know he had was pretty special when it came to receiving, and I imagine that Sean Payton really misses having a Jimmy Graham. And I doubt anyone's tired. Any Saints fan is tired of watching Michael Thomas go off. But after a while, you might think to yourself, "Man, I wish we had something else besides Michael Thomas, right?" So if Adam Trotman can become, maybe kind of like how Mark Andrews was his rookie year, or George. Nah, you can't expect George Kittle your rookie year. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more Mark Andrews style then, because Mark Andrews wasn't fantastic his rookie year, but 620 yards and 4 touchdowns is pretty good. If you can get that out of Adam Trotman, hey, I think that's a great draft pick for you to use. I don't think there was anything else that actually stuck out about their draft to me. I know they got Zach Bond, but wasn't high on that pick.
Was a really great. I thought it was a. I thought it was kind of questionable when it first happened, but Cesar Ruiz is a really great interior lineman. He could probably switch to guard and or center as well. I like the Zach Bond pick too because I felt like they needed to upgrade their linebacker position. But I mean, this is a team that only had 4 draft picks anyway, so their draft isn't the thing that really got me. One person that we haven't mentioned yet is Emmanuel Sanders.
Big one.
Oh, yeah. This team has needed a number 2,
it's an upgrade over Tengen for sure.
An upgrade over literally anybody they've had across from Michael Thomas since he's been. Michael Thomas has been the number 1 receiver, and then there's been about a mile of crap below him since he's been there. And I think it's a massive, massive upgrade, and it's only going to take Michael Thomas is a guy who had 150 plus catches last year or something like that.
I want to say it was 143, but I could not confirm the numbers to you at the moment.
Right. Now, and you could say that bringing Emmanuel Sanders in is going to take away some of his touches, but I think it's only going to give him more opportunity because he isn't going to be getting bracketed every play anymore. And even when he was being bracketed, he was still getting open every play and, getting that insane, massive, record-breaking production. I think that was huge for this offense. I think, personally for me, that was their biggest get of this offseason, was getting Emmanuel Sanders to finally have a true number 2 right across from Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I also think it's great that they picked up James Hurst for right tackle as well. He was, I might be a little bit biased here, but James Hurst, I'm going to miss him. He was part of Baltimore. I was really upset when he left and we didn't keep him. I understand that we need to put money towards Ronnie Stanley, so that's probably why we didn't keep James Hurst. Probably priced himself out, but I'm gonna miss having him there. I think it's a great pickup for the Saints. I'm gonna call this an upgrade, and I don't mean talent. Probably talent-wise, it is an upgrade, but I don't mean quarterback play. It's an upgrade. It's probably a side grade. But I think Jameis Winston over Teddy Bridgewater is an upgrade in the sense that he's not going to cost them as much money, which allowed them to sign other players. Signing Jameis Winston was a huge shock for me when he didn't go to the Steelers, and come to find out, actually, that the Steelers offered more money, but he picked the Saints, so I find that interesting. Man.
And you just
that's a solid pickup.
Like
I feel like that's a solid pickup.
Perfect fit for them too. That being the Steelers.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I felt like Jameis Winston would probably have been like the perfect fit for not only Jameis Winston but the Steelers as well. Like I just felt like that would have been. He just seems like a Ben Roethlisberger type.
I agree.
When I look at Jameis Winston.
And who knows if Roethlisberger was going to be healthy or not. I thought it was a dream scenario for the Steelers and Winston, but it didn't work out.
Exactly.
But I think this is a great opportunity for Winston, too. Supposedly, Breeze is going to retire sooner or later, right? He's probably a guy who's thinking, I can learn under Breeze, and then I can play for Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
Probably what he's thinking, right? And I assume Sean Payton probably might have that in mind as well, right? Like, hey, I could try out Jameis Winston, and if he doesn't work, draft a quarterback, right? And if he does work out, fantastic. I think a lot of people are. I know people love to meme it, but I think I can't speak. I think people are overlooking the fact that Jameis Winston got LASIK eye surgery. Like the fact that he said I can see street signs now. That tells me that if you had similar colored jerseys, because some of the interceptions he threw, you literally sit there and you're like, why'd you throw that there? Now there might have been a miscommunication between wide receiver and quarterback, sure. But for the most part, I'm like, I feel like you threw that just because you didn't know that was your guy.
Right.
Like, some of his interceptions, I'm like, you threw that because you didn't know that was your guy. Or whether that was your guy, or you thought it was your guy. Right? And if you really can't see street signs, and I can't see street signs, right? I can't imagine trying to throw a football to someone else 30 yards away in a similar-looking jersey. No way. Not happening. So, yeah, I think the LASIK eye surgery matters. But we'll see if Winston becomes a better decision maker, et cetera, post Drew Brees, if the Saints decide to keep him. There's a lot of ifs going on there. Either way, they're ready to make another Super Bowl run. I also think it helps that they got Ty Montgomery behind Alvin Kamara, someone to spell him for a little bit. It doesn't replace Mark Ingram, but you got someone there. It's a Super Bowl or bust for this team, right?
Right.
Pretty much how it goes. So, alrighty, let's move on to the other NFC South team who might be in Super Bowl bust conversation for a while, which is the Buccaneers. Do I have to state the obvious? Like, is that required? Like, do I need to state that Tom Brady's their quarterback? And that's a big reason why they're on this list, I feel. I mean, there's other reasons, but isn't that the biggest reason?
It's definitely the biggest reason.
Okay, cool. You got Tom Brady. You got Gronkowski. You're giving him receivers that have, multiple 1,000-yard seasons. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. This is a dream for Tom Brady, right? And then you draft a tackle to help him out in Tristan Wirfs. I feel like on Tom Brady alone, this team is on this list. But I also just said Gronkowski and Tristan Wirfs were there. You're protecting Tom Brady. There's questions around the defense, but we're talking about improvements here. I didn't plan on spending a lot of time on the Buccaneers because I feel like this is very obvious, right? This is like the most obvious pick to make. Like,
Right.
if a team's getting Tom Brady, and this is no discredit to Jameis Winston, but if you're getting a guy who's clutch and knows how to win it in the fourth quarter in the last 4 minutes, what more can you ask for?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the Tristan Wirfs pick, I liked Wirfs, but the fact that it was Bruce Arians' guy makes me nervous. Bruce Arians has never been good at drafting and developing offensive linemen. When he was in Arizona,
The bitterness
he took a guy
of a
named
Cardinals fan.
A little bit. But the Cardinals, I mean, they took Jonathan Cooper, and he broke his leg, and I believe in his second or third preseason game. And then that could have been part of the reason why he was never this. But I can't just chalk all that up to just him breaking his leg.
Yeah.
Then they took DJ Humphries.
By the way, Party,
Yes.
sorry. I would like to apologize to our audience for the audio that just happened. I was looking something up on the Buccaneers, and audio came through the computer. So my mistake on that. Continue what you were saying, Pardue.
So the Jonathan Cooper broke his leg, et cetera, et cetera. Another one, DJ Humphries. Now, DJ Humphries has really come around, and I personally, it might be bias, but this is a guy who I believe only gave up 1 sack last year and completely destroyed Nick Bosa in both the games that they matched up against one another. DJ Humphries has really come a long way, but his first year, Bruce Arians would openly berate DJ Humphries to the media, calling him knee-deep all the time. And then he was redshirted his first year and then hardly played his second year and then was injury-riddled. Last year was the first season he played a completely full season. Now, he's come a long way, but he's also had 3 different coaches now. And personally, and then I could go on and on and on about all the other offensive linemen that the Cardinals have taken under Bruce Arians. There's guys like Cole Toner, Earl Watford. I could go on. The guys that just flat out didn't turn out. Bobby Massey. Now, he's a solid right tackle for the Bears now, but when he was with the Cardinals, he wasn't doing anything. He was really bad. So we'll see how Tristan Wirfs turns out. I like Wirfs, and hopefully his personal talent will overcome whatever coaching flaws might come from the Bruce Arians coaching staff. But personally, I just don't trust BA and his staff to develop offensive linemen very well or very effectively.
It's fair. We'll see what happens with that. Another big reason I put them on my list here, this was a team, when I looked at them, and I realized they didn't lose much. The notable names they lost were Peyton Barber and Rashad Perriman. Do you care?
Yeah, missing them, no.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, yeah, they lost Jameis Winston, but you got Tom Brady, so who cares? And they re-signed. They kept players that I felt that they should have kept, right? Like they kept Jason Pierre-Paul. I felt they kept Ryan Smith. They kept Ndamukong Suh. Like they kept players that they were supposed to keep, and they let players go that they didn't care about. I feel like this is a team that should be immediately step up from being considered the 3rd best team in the NFC South to number 1 or number 2, and that automatically puts you as one of the most improved teams. Let alone the fact that Tom Brady is the quarterback. And I'm not trying to gush over Tom Brady here, but I don't think you can really overstate that he's not a New England Patriot anymore and he moved to another team. It's completely shocking, and I know people are sick of hearing about it, but the reality is that this is like Joe Montana moving to the Chiefs. And Joe Montana still made an AFC championship with the Chiefs.
I'm just interested to see how Tom Brady fits in the BA offense because it's not a scheme fit.
It's not a scheme fit, but I'm telling you he's going to adapt to it.
No, I 100% agree. It's just it's not a match.
How do you think?
But I'm sure they'll make it work. How
do you think Arians would be forming a double tight end scheme? Because it really looks like they're going to be keeping both Gronkowski and OJ Howard.
I mean, he ran quite a few 2 tight end sets when he was in Arizona. I mean, so I feel like a good portion of their offense is out of 12 personnel. And especially if that's only going to help with pass protection for Brady, and you know how he likes his tight ends, so I'm sure that's going to be a big part of their offense.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I think that's all I got on the Bucs.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
So Brady left the AFC East. We're gonna move to the AFC East. Let's hit up the Dolphins here. So you're one of the worst teams in the NFL. You have a ton of cash, and you have multiple first-round picks. Automatically, I feel like you should be included in the most improved list. Now, to be fair, I don't think they hit on all their first-round picks.
Yeah.
But you got Tua. That's pretty nice. Okay. You got Byron Jones from the Dolphins. I think that's pretty nice. What'd you say?
You said from the Dolphins. You meant from. I think you meant from the Cowboys.
Yeah, from the Cowboys. Yep.
But yeah, that's a massive upgrade to their secondary that was really starved for talent.
You grabbed Keep Talib. You grabbed Kyle Van Noy.
Eric Flowers.
You got Emmanuel Ogbah from the Chiefs. I don't think Jordan Howard's really worth mentioning, but I could throw him in there too.
Maybe while you say it might not be worth mentioning, can you name the other running backs before Kenyon Drake got traded that they had?
Can I?
They were awful.
I can name one of them, but that's
ASU.
it.
Yeah.
I think it was Malcolm Perkins, wasn't it?
I mean, he might have been, but that wasn't the one I was thinking of. The guy from ASU I'm thinking of is what was it? I'm gonna have to look it up.
Here, I got you.
Go ahead.
Let me look it up right now for you. It was. Oh wow, they didn't even. I was just telling. Oh, right here. Patrick Laird. That's who it was.
That was.
Oh, they also signed Matt. They also have Matt Breida. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. Having Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, they're good. Kalen Ballage was the other one I was thinking of.
Okay.
He averaged like 1.9 yards per carry. Jordan Howard and Matt Breida are massive upgrades. That'll be a pretty good 1-2 punch.
Yeah. So, and as of right now, they've said that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter, which is fine. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. It's probably better for Tua.
I agree.
I mean, overall, though, like, when we do this, most improved teams thing, we're talking about, like, what did their roster look like before? What does it look like now? It was bare bones before. So it's really hard to not put them on this list.
And what they did have, they traded all away.
Oh, yeah, because they were trying to completely rebuild for their new head coach, which I'm totally fine with. I think it's fine that, the front office was like, hey, we really don't like where we're at. We don't like what Adam Gase did. So we're going to start over with Brian Flores. And I'm sure Brian Flores kind of knew this, but it's also Brian Flores' job to win games for the players and the fans and inspire the locker room, right? And based upon how the Dolphins played,
I feel like down the stretch he did that.
I think he's got the locker room. I 100% think he does. Now, obviously, players are going to change. Obviously, players are going to change, but whatever. I think it'll be a solid team that's going to do better than last year. I can't guarantee you they're going to get a wild card or anything like that, but I think you have to like what they did.
Agreed.
Man, that was really quick on the Dolphins. That was quicker than I thought it was going to be. All right, staying in the AFC East, let's talk about the Bills here. So there's not like a ton the Bills actually improved on, so it's kind of weird that we have them in our teams here, but in reality, they addressed what you and I said back in February was their biggest issue, which was wide receiver, and they grabbed Stephon Diggs. If supposedly you think, and the general manager did say they thought the receiving core was the biggest problem and why they couldn't beat the Texans, if you think that's your biggest problem and you adjust it, well, what am I to say against that, right? Obviously, you're the professional. Obviously, you think that's great for you, and a lot of people love the pickup. I think the combination of Diggs, Brown, and Beasley is pretty solid for Josh Allen. the key part to this is Josh Allen needs to throw accurately, but I'm not examining what their team was before. I'm examining what their new team looks like now. And
Right.
I think the Bills did a bang-up job by getting Stephon Diggs. You don't even need to look at the rest of their free agency to think that they did fine. You just need to see that they got Stephon Diggs, and you're like, yeah, I'll take it. I would take it.
And I mean, the rest of the free agency was pretty good too. They got Mario Addison a 3-year deal. They brought in a linebacker and AJ Klein on a 3-year deal. Now, while this guy isn't what he used to be,
You're
like
gonna say Josh
former,
Norman.
I am gonna say Josh.
Oh boy.
Now, behind a guy like Tre'Davious White and the other players in the secondary and all the other pieces, great pieces they already have on their defense, he could be a solid, number 3 corner. I'd take that.
I could see it. Yeah. The Bills didn't have to do a ton. They really didn't.
No, they didn't.
But the minimal that they did, for me, the big thing that pushed this over for me to put them into the discussion was AJ Klein and Josh Norman.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are just both massive upgrades to what they had. And I think this is what pushes them maybe into a top 3, top 4 team discussion, possibly this coming year. I'm talking discussion, not actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And when you examine their draft, I think they did just fine. I mean, they grabbed another receiver from UCF, fine. They grabbed Zach Moss for a running back to help them out, totally fine with that. And they grabbed a defensive end, and obviously the first round pick was used on Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was AJ Epineza, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bills had a solid offseason. They were ones that I debated on not putting on here. But quite honestly, when I looked at all the other teams, I was like, yeah, I think the Bills nail this with the Bills make it into this top 10 mostly just because of Stephon. If Stephon Diggs wasn't here, I probably wouldn't have added them on here.
Agreed. But no, I like you're saying, they had a great off season. They addressed all their needs, and now you kind of know how I feel about Josh Allen. I think.
Yeah, if you want to know how we really feel about Josh Allen, you should watch our previous episode where we talked about the state of the New York teams. Shameless plug right there. It was on the New York Jets, the New York Giants, and the Bills. Anyway, what were you saying?
I'm not super huge on Josh Allen, but and like you said, you could hear my comments in the previous episode. But this team's going to compete. That team, if one team has an easy quote, or I mean, easy in air quotes, ride to a division title, I would say it's probably the Bills. I really like what they did this offseason. That defense is still going to be incredible. You still got one of the best defensive backs in all of football in Trey White. You got a great wide receiver now. You got a good running back room with Zach Moss and what was his name? It's slipping my head right now. Devin Singletary.
Devin Singletary.
Yes. I think this is going to be a really good team, and they're building themselves to be a good team, not just next year, but for multiple years down the road.
Man, you're disrespecting my boy Sam Darnold over here. It's okay. I don't like Adam Gase, so I kind of want Adam Gase to be gone. No, I kind of agree with you. I feel like they are the favorites to win this coming year.
Mm-hmm. I think the Jets are fine. It's just I think the Bills are quite a few steps ahead of them.
Yeah. Alrighty. So Broncos was the first obvious pick that I had. This is the second obvious pick. And if anyone disagrees with the Cardinals or Broncos, I just think you're nuts for being on this list. Did I just say the Cardinals?
Yes.
Oh, well, it's the Cardinals. If you truly look at what the Cardinals did this offseason, you just need to say Isaiah Simmons and DeAndre Hopkins, and I think they make this list. You just say those two names, and I'm like, yep. They did a great job, fantastic. I'm not even counting the other players that they added, right? I'm just talking Isaiah Simmons and DeAndre Hopkins, and you're fine. They retained Kenyon Drake, got rid of David Johnson, like, bam, boom,
now,
instantly improved
right,
team.
exactly, right there. That's the one thing I wanted to bring up, because the DeAndre Hopkins addition is absolutely incredible, but the way they did it is even more impressive and noteworthy than getting DeAndre Hopkins. David Johnson was going to be making $15 million next
He
year.
still will be, technically.
Steve Keim convinced the Texans organization and Bill Bryant to take all of David Johnson's contract for DeAndre Hopkins and a second-round pick. That is just that's one of the that'll be one of the greatest trades of all time. And
yeah,
that's just the way you got to look at it.
If DeAndre Hopkins maintains his elite status and what I'm assuming is going to be Hall of Fame status with the Cardinals, and the Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins becomes the new Warner to Larry Fitzgerald for you, and it happens more than just 1 year, right? If this happens for a consistent, let's just say the next 3 to 4 years, and I anticipate they'll pay Hopkins, so he'll be there for a while. But if this happens for the next 3 to 4 years, and you are led to an NFC championship, maybe even a Super Bowl, not even winning it, but if you just get up there because your offense is that dynamic, this will go down kind of like, I think it was the Earl Hurst trade or the Emmitt Smith trade? I forget. It was a trade that the Cowboys made with the Vikings, and it was considered one of the greatest mistakes ever made.
It was probably Earl Hurst, because the only other team that Emmitt Smith played for was the Cardinals, and we don't talk about that.
It was Herschel Walker, the Herschel Walker trade. That's what it was. Herschel Walker, not Earl Hurst. I'm dumb. Herschel Walker. I just disrespected Herschel Walker. My goodness. The Herschel Walker trade. This probably could go down as one of the worst trades, kind of like the Herschel Walker trade was. This might be known as the DeAndre Hopkins trade 10 years from now if it works out like it's supposed to. One addition that didn't meet a lot of people's radar, but it met my radar, was the Jordan Phillips pickup from the Cardinals. I really like that they picked up another person for the defensive line. I think it needed an upgrade, and they got it in Jordan Phillips. I think it's a fantastic pickup for the Cardinals, and I honestly, truly believe these... I'm just going to say it without pausing. The Cardinals are going to be a wild card team. They will be. I anticipate Kyler Murray to make a step up. I anticipate DeAndre Hopkins is going to light it up. That frees up Larry Fitzgerald as your number 3, and Christian Kirk is your number 2. And that's no disrespect to Larry. That's just where his role is at this
I would
point.
still say Larry's the number 2, but go ahead.
You don't think Christian Kirk can step it up?
I like Christian Kirk a lot, but at this point, given the injuries, he has the ability to drop some pretty easy passes. I would still put him in the number 3 slot. We'll see what kind of steps he takes in his 3rd year.
Fair. Either way, I know those are the 3 that are starting.
Correct. And then if Hakeem Butler or Andy Isabella step up, man, that receiver core is going to be really,
you forget about Hakeem Butler. So that's the one that was something that I wrote down. No one remembers that Hakeem Butler was drafted by the Cardinals because he got injured before a single thing happened. If I remember correctly, it wasn't even during training camp. It was summer camp, right?
No, it was training camp, because I watched him in a couple practices, yeah.
Oh, that's right. You sent me pictures. I remember that now. You sent me Snapchats. I remember that now.
Yeah.
But they got healthy with Hakeem Butler and the wide receiver core. And you have DeAndre Hopkins, and Larry Fitzgerald is still there. There is no reason I don't think that this team has not been improved enough. And also another year for Cliff Kingsbury, for this team to not shoot far and above and beyond everyone's expectations. Now, there are a couple analysts out there riding the Arizona hype train. More people are riding the Broncos hype train, but there's a couple analysts out there riding the Cardinals hype train, and you should be getting on it right now, because I understand they're in a very tough division.
But they competed with this division all year last year as well.
If you ask me, it's quite possible they can 2-0 the Rams. I understand the Rams have the Cardinals' number. I understand that. I know they do. I live in Arizona. I know the Rams have their number. I honestly believe this is the year where they can buck that. The Cardinals were one of the toughest teams for the 49ers to play against, and the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. If no one remembers that Halloween game, the Halloween night game between San Francisco and Cardinals, you should go back and watch it because that was a fantastic game. Bit of a heartbreaker for Party over here, but as a neutral viewer for me, it was a fantastic game.
That one hurt.
Yeah, there's just so much to love about the Cardinals, and what they did in the offseason was brilliant.
And when you're looking at the offseason, this Cardinals roster coming in the offseason had holes everywhere. Almost every single position besides quarterback needed to be addressed. And they pretty much did that. And prior to even the draft, they addressed every single one of their needs. Their number one need outside offensive line and wide receiver was a defensive tackle, and they got that in Jordan Phillips. And then bolstered it in the draft with guys like Leke Futu and Rashard Lawrence. And then they addressed the running situation by getting rid of their, cap monster in David Johnson, and then retaining Kenyon Drake on an $8.7, I believe, $million tag. And now that's in the that's like, I believe, it's definitely in the top 10 in terms of running back payment. So, but I mean, it's on a 1-year deal, so it's really not that big of a deal. And then Kenyon Drake down the stretch last year, he was averaging 5.2 yards a pop. He has the ability to be one of the better running backs in the league this upcoming season. And then the Cardinals linebackers last year were just absolutely terrible outside of Jordan Hicks. And they added a guy, Devondre Campbell from the Falcons, who was a very solid linebacker for them, a guy who takes up a lot of space. He's pretty good in cover, something the Cardinals have struggled with. He does show lapses and seems to make some mental errors in coverage sometimes, but it's a massive upgrade in terms of the guys like Joe Walker that the Cardinals were throwing out last year, or Hassan Reddick when he was still playing middle linebacker. So it's a massive upgrade there. And then one thing that a lot of even Cardinal fans aren't talking about is 2 off seasons ago, we signed Robert Alford to a 3-year, I believe, like $27 million deal. Now, Robert Alford, he's a pretty good defensive back.
And he didn't play last year.
He didn't. He was injured. He broke his arm in training camp. That's a massive, massive upgrade for the Cardinals. They had to throw Byron Murphy, who was a rookie last year, and he was all right. He obviously struggled because he wasn't in his role he was supposed to be playing, because he was supposed to be the number 3 corner slot guy, and that's how and where he was going to be. Instead, he got tossed into being the number 1 corner because, if we remember, Patrick Peterson was suspended the first 6 games, and then Robert Alford broke his arm. So Byron Murphy, a rookie, a guy who's expected to be the number 3, became the number 1 due to things completely out of his control. Now, you put him at his normal position, that being Byron Murphy, then bring back Robert Alford, probably the most talented defensive across from Patrick Peterson that P2 has ever had. That's massive for the Cardinals. And then with the way they supplemented in the draft, getting Isaiah Simmons, it's just insane. I had no way did I think he was going to be there at number 8.
I don't think anybody did. I remember when the Panthers were coming up, and I was like, part of me, I actually had the text written out already, shaming you, like, ha ha ha, the Panthers picked him up, right? But as soon as I wrote it out and I was waiting for the Panthers to, I'm like, no, I wrote this out, and the Panthers are not going to pick him. I was like, they're just not. Not because I wrote it out, but I was just like, this feels like a Cardinals offseason where everything would go right for them. And the fact that Isaiah Simmons fell to them is just beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
So
and like, they addressed all their needs prior to the draft, so they were able to take the best available player there. And I would say at that point, their need was a defensive superstar kind of guy who can play almost any position, a guy who is flexible and is able to do so many things. They needed like a defensive X factor, and that's exactly what they got. And Vance Joseph kind of struggled last year. He wasn't he wasn't a good defensive coordinator last year, and he made some questionable calls, like on 4th and shorts, putting Chandler Jones in coverage, which just doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make sense to put Chandler Jones in coverage in any situation ever anyway. But now Vance Joseph has no excuse. You have a lot of talent on this. If this defense doesn't turn around next year or even midway through the season, I could see Vance Joseph getting.
I could see it happening. So I let Pardue go on his little rant over there. He always loves to rant about the Cardinals. If you're a new listener, you might get that occasionally.
I'm very excited for the Cardinals this season, but that's all I got on them now.
All right, cool. We got 2 more teams, and we also have like a small honorable mention we're gonna hit on slightly, but we got 2 more. This was one of Pardue's teams, and I did not really question it, actually. I kind of let him have it because I wanted to see what he had to say. I had them up there. I did not put them in my 10 most improved, but hey, I wasn't going to argue against it either because they probably would be my number 11, 12, or 13. The Colts. What you got for me on the Colts? Why were they one of the most improved teams this year?
My notes. Okay, so first of all, now obviously Phillip Rivers isn't the quarterback he used to be.
Obviously,
that arm is losing juice. It's starting to look like Peyton Manning down at the very end of his career.
God, that was awful. That was an awful time.
Yeah, it was literally like watching a noodle throw a football. There was no power behind it. With that said, that's still an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. And no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, he's not a starting quarterback in this league. He's not. He's a guy who can come in and fill and play a couple games if your starter gets hurt, but he's not a starting quarterback. So Phillip Rivers right there, adding that to the quarterback position, I believe that's a pretty big upgrade for them. Hopefully he stays healthy because I believe that the Colts, if the Colts had Andrew Luck last year, that's a playoff team. They were a really good football team the year before. And man, do I miss Andrew Luck because he's my favorite quarterback. That being said, in addition to the Phillip Rivers addition, they got a really good running back, probably arguably the best running back in the draft in Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin. Personally, I like Marlon Mack, but I wouldn't consider him a number 1 back. But if you were to have a backfield of Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. Obviously, the big addition they made this offseason was the trade for DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, that's the big one that points out to me. It was DeForest Buckner.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge upgrade for their defensive line. In addition to that, now this one's kind of questionable because Rhodes have been pretty open lately, but they also added Xavier Rhodes to that secondary, which is pretty starved for talent, I would say, as well. That's for the most part, that's the majority of their big additions. But I think adding I wouldn't necessarily say this, but I would say maybe an all-time great in Phillip Rivers at quarterback and upgrading your position that way, then supplementing your offense with guys like Trey Burton and Michael Pittman to go along with T.Y. Hilton. I believe that's adding depth like that opens up your offense. So I feel that improves your team more than just the big splashes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So there was one player that they added that I thought was actually a downgrade. And this is why I did not ultimately put them on my list, but I think I think putting them on there was fine, and it's why I'm allowing this team to be on our list. What do you think of them signing the roads are open for cornerback?
Yeah, I mean, because when I'm thinking about it, I don't know. Their secondary is kind of starved for talent, and I mean, I'm not sure how much talent Xavier Rhodes has left, but I believe I wouldn't necessarily call it a downgrade. Maybe it's a side shift and adding more, and maybe he just kind of needed to get out of Minnesota, maybe he needed a change of scenery.
It's an expensive
I guess we'll just have to
side grade,
wait to see how he turns out. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see how it turns out. I'm not 100% down on Rhodes. I still think I'm not sure what it is and why he's just trailed off so badly as of late, but he was a really great defensive back for several years. I feel like he could still not necessarily return to form, but still be a solid number 2 corner. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of said my thoughts when I called him the roads are open, right?
Yeah.
I think I was just massively disappointed by what he did last year, right? Like, I was pretty high on the Vikings, and yeah, they went to the divisional round, but Rhodes was not helpful in that, right? I can't say I like him right now. Maybe he has a bounce back season, but typically when we see running backs or cornerbacks, I should just say defensive backs instead of cornerbacks, so it's not confused. When running backs or defensive backs decline, it's usually permanent. It's not usually a thing they come back from. So I guess it's a wait and see, but for the most part, I'm not a fan of the signing.
And that's fair. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a fan of it, but I would say it was a low risk, potentially medium to high reward for them. How do you feel about that?
I could take that. I can take that. I'm just trying to find how big the contract was, but I can't find it anywhere. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. Like, it doesn't actually say what they signed it for. I know they gave him a prove it deal because it was just a 1-year deal
with a lot of incentives. Yeah,
I just don't remember how much it was. I remember looking at it and thinking it was more than I thought it should have been. Either way, for whatever reason, it's not coming up on searches, which is kind of lame, actually. You would think that the details of a contract would come up if I just searched it. Oh well. We can move on to the last team of this, and then we get to our honorable mention, and we will have filled our hour and 20 is what it looks like it's going to be. Not bad. So, the last one is the Bengals. It's something that Pardue said, and I guess it kind of convinced me. When you draft a quarterback that is supposed to be your franchise quarterback, and one who completely lit up college, admittingly only for 1 year, but lit up college, I think it's safe to say that you've
probably had the single greatest season for a quarterback in NCAA history.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say you've upgraded, right? Because prior to that, Cam Newton had arguably the best ever, and Cam Newton was fantastic for a while. And you can expect Joe Burrow to do more of the same, right? I feel.
Oh, most definitely. I now, as an LSU fan, him getting drafted to the Bengals does kind of make me a little bit nervous because I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. I love Joe Burrow. Now, I just don't know how that organization is going to treat him. And the whole rumors of him potentially not wanting to go to the Bengals makes me a little bit nervous as well. Because, I mean, obviously to the media, he's going to say, oh, that's not true. Of course I would want to go play for my hometown team, et cetera, et cetera. But do you really? Because when things like that come out, there's usually some sort of validity to them. So I really like Joe Burrow, and I think he's going to be an excellent NFL quarterback. But I expect him. All rookie quarterbacks struggle in their first year, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to get ugly because I think he's got really great weapons, and they set him up fairly well with the offseason they had and the players returning from injury. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be a great quarterback, but I think his rookie year may be misleading to what he could be. What are your thoughts?
I like what's presented around Joe Burrow. As for like the Bengals improving themselves, AJ Green comes back. I think that's massive, and that helps out Joe Burrow too. They've got a lot of offensive weapons, right? And I don't want to sum up the Bengals being on our list because Joe Burrow's here. The question is, like, can he be better than Andy Dalton? I think as of right now, yes, he can be better than Andy Dalton. So if you upgrade your quarterback position, as we saw with the Bucs, now you cannot compare Tom Brady to Joe Burrow. Not what I'm doing. But as we saw with the Bucs, if you can improve your quarterback position, kind of with the Colts too, if you can improve your quarterback position, you've probably already upgraded your team at least to a few wins, right? Whether that's the Buccaneers going from 7-9 to 10-6, or the Colts going from, damn, I don't even remember what their record was. Was it 6-10?
I think so.
I know they were. I know they were
there.
third. I know they were third in the division. I just don't remember what their record was. Either way, it wasn't a good year for them. And if you go from that to say a 9-7 team, hey, why not? Right?
Now, obviously the big name is Joe Burrow. But when you look at their offseason as a whole, they had a really good one. They got the defensive tackle who was previously, I believe, with the Texans, and DJ Reader. They signed him to a really big deal. He is a great defensive tackle. That is a massive upgrade along the defensive line. With Geno Atkins across from him as well, that defensive line, with those two guys, is monstrous. And when I was convincing you to mention the Bengals earlier, Geno Atkins completely slipped my mind. Pairing him with DJ Reader, that is a dirty combination. In addition to that, they also picked up Trey Waynes, which is a really good upgrade for their secondary. He's no means elite, or maybe not even top 10, but he's a solid defensive back and a lot better than what they had previously. They also picked up Mackenzie Alexander and Von Bell to their defense, who, again, you aren't going to call those excellent, super amazing, superstar players, but it's a massive upgrade to what they had previously. And then when they're getting guys like AJ Green and Jonah Hill back from injury on the offense, that sets up Joe Burrow to have success as a rookie and to have a really good running in Joe Mixon as well, and a fairly decent offensive line in front of him. They could be set up for success. Maybe not massive success going forward, but compared to what they were last year, they could add 3-4 wins to their total from this last year. I could see that. But obviously they're going to be a fourth place team going forward. They still got a lot of work to do, but to make the strides they did this offseason, that's always massive. And to find your quarterback, if you can find your quarterback and you can find that's how you're going to build your team. So moving forward, they're pretty well set up.
Keep in mind, this was a team that won 1-15. So when we say they improved, we're imagining 4-12, 5-11. We are not imagining them to compete for the division whatsoever. We anticipate teams like Baltimore, Pittsburgh to run them over, more or less still. Especially when you think about the defensive backs that Joe Burrow has to throw to on any of the three teams, whether it's the Browns, the Ravens, or Steelers. I remember when it was officially announced that he was drafted, I was like, God bless Joe Burrow. He has to throw against all these cornerbacks. Denzel Ward, Marlon Humphrey, Minka Fitzpatrick. It's just a nightmare.
Right.
Yeah, not fun. Not fun. Either way, we'll see what the Bengals do from here. Honorable mention, throwing the Lions out there. Matt Stafford got healthy. They were looking really good. This team was looking really, really good. I mean, they had a tie with the Cardinals game 1, but if I remember correctly, they started 2-0-1, right? Like, they were undefeated for the first 3 weeks. And I understand the first 3 weeks doesn't entitle anyone to anything, but starting undefeated in your first 3 weeks is a nice indication that your team is going somewhere. And then Stafford went down, and then the Lions went to total shit. I think getting
But no, I remember I was pretty high on the Lions the first couple of weeks of the season. They were a solid football team.
yeah, I really enjoyed what the Lions were putting onto the table. Unfortunately, like I said, Matt Stafford just went downhill. They started 2-0-1, and then they went 3-12-1. What can you do, right? And to be fair, Matt Stafford only got injured week 9, so to be fair, for the next 5 games, they didn't do well either with Matt Stafford. But regardless, missing out on your starting quarterback is massive, and I think it's important to recognize his health. Improves the team automatically from what it was.
Right.
Another thing that you have to think about is they really did not lose much at all in free agency. In fact, they made more additions than they did for losses. So, for example, they lost out on Mike Daniels, but does that matter too much? Like, does that matter too much to you?
Nah, not really.
No,
I
not.
mean, they could definitely go forward without it. And he's an aging guy. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, right. And wait, I forget. Did we mention the Lions already?
No, we have not.
Okay,
We
cool.
talked about them earlier.
I remember talking about them. Okay, so the one thing that I like is they signed Jamie Collins, familiar with Matt Patricia's defense. They signed Danny Shelton, again, familiarity. They signed Desmond Trufant, which doesn't replace Darius Slay, quite honestly, but they drafted I'm gonna butcher his name, Akbuda. What's his name? Help me out here.
Who was it? I mean, look.
It was Jeff something. I'm not good with the draft. You're a draft guy over here.
Oh, Jeff Okuda. Oh, yeah. Jeff Okuda.
Jeff Okuda.
Great
thank
addition.
You. Yeah, it wasn't
I
Akbuda. It was Okuda. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you forget about that for a second?
Oh, yeah, I did.
So they got that. They maintained Danny Amendola, which I think will be a great wide receiver 3 for them. They didn't make our list because maybe nothing they did stands out on paper. But I think getting Matt Stafford back and getting some familiarity for Matt Patricia probably helps, especially when you had a corner who completely denounced you as he was leaving the team, right? So maybe you need not a good look. So maybe you need some players who are going to be more on your side with that, and I think that's totally fine. So I also think it helps that they're in a division that's maybe more open than people think. The Packers made an NFC championship, but who really knows like what's going to happen with them?
They were labeled the worst 13-3 team of all time.
They were labeled, they were labeled a quote unquote bad 13-3 team.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense to me.
It really doesn't make sense when you label a 13-3 team bad. But you look at their schedule and you're like, I wish they'd play some more tougher teams, but it's okay. They got smashed in the NFC Championship is kind of the big thing. You got the Vikings, but you have really no idea what's going to happen with the Vikings. I mean, they had 15 draft picks. Holy shit. Yeah. And the Bears are the Bears. This division is a little more open than you think. I still think the Packers are favored to win it, but that doesn't mean that you can't have an outside chance on it in the NFC North. So, yeah, I think the Lions could certainly prove to be a bigger surprise than people might think.
I would agree.
So that's it from us.
Especially if they can get up to what they did last year.
Yeah, if they can pick up from where they left off in the first 3 weeks, that'd be nice. Yeah, that's it from us. We are under our hour and a half, not hour and 20, unfortunately. We are under our hour and a half, which is usually our goal. So if you enjoyed listening to us, please subscribe to us. If you would prefer, this is going into podcast form. We are considering putting it into an actual podcast form, so that way, if you have an iPhone, you could do Apple Podcasts. If you're a Google phone, you could do Google Play, or obviously if you're Android, you could go to Google Play as well. We are considering doing those things, but for now, since we are relatively small in our viewership, This is where we're sticking, but if we see our numbers rise, we're definitely going to be putting it out there, making it as accessible as possible. If you have any comments for us, please let us know. We are always looking for ways to improve our show, and we will always take some audience members' suggestions. Last thing from us is you can follow our Twitter at HeadCouchAnalysts. You can also follow me at HC Sanders. It's short for Head Couch Sanders. And you can follow Pardue over here at OndleAZ. No, sorry, not OndleAZ. What is it? I forget.
It's AZ Sports.
AZ Sports. So, by the way, when you search Head Couch Analysts, that's how you'll find us. But if you really want to know our Twitter handle, it's HC Analysts. Just saying. So, yeah. Please follow us. Let us know how we did. Do you got anything else for today's episode?
I think that's about it. I'm pretty hungry, and I think I'm gonna go eat some pizza.
All right, sounds good to me. I'm gonna be getting some lunch too, but it's gonna be some barbecue for myself.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good for me. So, from Pardue over on the wayside, and from me, Sanders, we are Head Couch Analysts, and we will catch you guys on our next episode. Thanks for tuning in.